Again, hi everybody. Thank you so much for joining us and welcome to also known as this January event. My name is Katie and I'm a member of the board of directors. For those who are new, also known as is an organization based in New York City for all international adoptees. With us tonight are the co-editors and contributors of Between Two Worlds, a special issue of Maya America, Journal of Essays, Commentary, and Analysis. Also known as is proud to help amplify this anthology and celebrate its rightful place among the growing body of adoptee-led and adoptee-written literature. Gemma Givens is a co-editor of Between Two Worlds and the founder of Next Generation Guatemala, an organization for Guatemalan adoptees. It received an honorable mention in the New Ideas for Nonprofit Organizations category for the 2020 Emprendete Guatemala competition. Carly Tagen-Dye is also a co-editor and writer based in New York City. Her work has been published in the Augment Review, New York Press, Alma, and elsewhere. Our remaining contributors, Mario, Leah, Thom, and Antonio, will be introduced by Gemma and Carly later on this evening. If at any time you have questions for our guests, please add them to the chat. We will also be sharing more information about our guests, the anthology, and Next Generation Guatemala in the chat throughout the event.
Yeah, so during our early years, Next Generation Guatemala's focus was simply to identify and connect with adoptees from Guatemala, which was not an easy task in 2012 when there was no one social media platform that we were all on, one hashtag we all identified under, or even one location that we were all adopted to. Some of us had never met another adoptee from Guatemala or never talked about being adopted with anyone before. 10 years on, Next Generation Guatemala has connected over 800 adoptees across 358 cities and 20 countries around the world. Years of incredible stories shared within our private community group inspired members to start talking about sharing our stories with a broader audience. And it was Carly who answered the call to serve as editor, the Maya America Journal out of Kennesaw State that offered us the publishing platform. And over the past year, we've been working on developing this first of its kind anthology of Guatemalan adoptee voices. We had no idea how vast an audience it would reach, as well as the impact it would have on us and our contributors.
We don't hear enough from this perspective of walking between two worlds. So I want to offer my deepest thanks to fellow adoptee organization, also known as, for bringing us together today and uplifting this issue, Maya America for publishing this unique view of the Mayan and Central American experience, and to Gemma for being a great co-editor. Most of all, though, we're extremely grateful to our contributors, Leah, Antonio, Jose, and Thom, for their courage and trust in sharing their work with us. I am still in awe of the variety and depth of the work they produce, which touches upon subjects like the shortcomings of transracial adoption, colorblindness, and racial awareness within our families and communities in returning to Guatemala and reclaiming our culture. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our first speaker, Leah Wall.
Hi, everyone. My name's Leah. I'm a current junior at Tufts University, double majoring in psychology and Latin American studies. I was adopted from Guatemala at a very young age, an experience that shaped me to who I am today, and I dedicate my works to my fellow transracial adoptees and also my family back home in Guatemala. I will first begin by reading an excerpt from my essay, Avocado, Fruit or Vegetable. I'm an avocado. No, I'm not green, nor do I taste good with chips. I'm an avocado in the way in which I belong in the world. Avocados are an awkward food. They're technically fruits, but no one considers them to be fruits, as people are more likely to view them as vegetables. I'm an avocado. Although I outwardly look Latina, sometimes I feel as though I'm not Latina enough or brown enough to fit in this category. My experience being a transracial adoptee has put me between two very different worlds. I live in a limbo between two very distinct groups, which allows me to relate to different people, but also separates me further from the world. My experience of being adopted has isolated me from my white family and other Latinas, yet it has allowed me to relate to people I never thought I would, such as sometimes people who also feel out of place and in between different groups. Sometimes I feel like I'm a stranger in my own family. something I've never admit to my parents in fear of disappointing them. I cannot remember when this feeling started, but it has been there for as long as I remember. I love my family with all of my heart, but sometimes I think they forget I am not white. So that was an excerpt from my essay, Avocado, Fruit or Vegetable, in which I talk about feeling as though I'm walk a limbo between these two very different worlds. My mother's family is from Alabama, and her family's more on like the conservative side, so I delve a little bit into that, especially after the 2016 election. And I want to say that I'm grateful for the opportunity to share this, and I hope that other Guatemalan adoptees read this. And I want to add a little bit to it now, that if I had to write this again, if I had to write it as the person that I am now, I would say I live between three worlds now. My Latina identity, the whiteness in my family, and a big part of my identity is being Indigenous. I'm Maya Quiche and Xinca, adopted from Guatemala. And I think that that is also an important voice to speak to. And I hope that one day further down the road, I can write something that represents that. I also wrote about this like inner battle between my cultures, called Mi Batalla Interna, ¿Cuál es mi cultura? And it is a story about the first time that I traveled to Guatemala, when I could actually remember walking the streets that my parents walked. So I just want to read a little bit of that. Tenía 16 años cuando volví a casa por primera vez en 10 años. Mi avión aterrizó y el piloto anunció: "Bienvenidos a Guatemala". Miré por la ventana con nerviosismo. Finalmente estaba en casa. So it's this feeling of kind of being at home in a place that you can't call home quite yet. And I think it was this trip very much shaped me into who I was. It had a profound impact on the person that I became. I saw the touristy side of Guatemala, and then I saw the towns where my parents grew up, and just seeing people that looked like me walking around was I can't even describe it. It was a really memorable experience, and I hope that every adoptee, when they're ready, has the chance to go back to Guatemala and see how life is over there. And I hope that you get the chance to read my essays, because I put a lot of work into them. And I'm very happy that I had the opportunity to write this for My America. So thank you so much.
Our next speaker is Antonio Giannico, who I had the pleasure of meeting in 2019. Take it away, Antonio.
Hi, Gemma. It's nice to meet you, to see you again. Please excuse my accent in case, because it's not my first language, English. So first of all, please, maybe if there are some weird words that come out of my mouth, like, sorry. So yeah, I'm just gonna start to introduce myself. I'm Antonio Giannico. I live in Switzerland. I was adopted in Switzerland back in 1997. And I've been living here since that time, and I haven't been back to Guatemala since that moment, right? So I'm gonna also read an excerpt from what I wrote 1 year ago, and then I will comment also that afterwards. So the title is Grasping One's Identity as a Guatemalan Adoptee in Switzerland. So when asked to submit something for this project, I saw an opportunity to share my story, but also to express my opinion on adoption and how it has evolved throughout the various stages of my life. First, I want to give a bit of context to help readers understand my perspective. I was born in Guatemala in 1995 and adopted 2 years later by an Italian-Swiss family. I arrived in Switzerland at 18 months, and I'm still living there now. I grew up speaking French and Italian at home. I don't have any siblings in Europe. Growing up and throughout my teenage years, being adopted was not a big deal for me. Here, I need to emphasize that I grew up in a very multicultural city with a huge migration tradition. Therefore, the white Swiss type was and still is the minority in that city. I believe now that it's the reason people would not be surprised by my story, especially because the people around me were mostly friends of my parents and were of an Italian Swiss tradition. So I believe that they didn't feel entitled nor comfortable questioning my statements. This makes me think that somehow I was conscious that I was different to other little kids. Looking back, I have always been struggling with identity. Only a few years ago, I wasn't ready to open the conversation, or better said, I didn't know how to begin questioning things, but out of fear of betraying my two countries, but also my parents. Sometimes I also just wish that I had known about my past earlier. I wish my parents could have helped guide me on my path. I do not mean to say that they had stuff from me or that they didn't do their best, because I believe they did. It's just that in this process, one can feel very lonely sometimes, at times. I wish I would have had a few Guatemalan adoptees in Switzerland closer to me to share some stories and experiences that only they could properly understand. Unfortunately, this is still not the case now. I met a few Guatemalan non-adoptees in Switzerland, but I could see very fast that the connection I was looking for simply was not there. I guess it has to do with the fact that geographically speaking, Guatemala and South America are very far from Switzerland. Writing about that also makes me reflect on the fact that recently, leaving the town I grew up in and moving to another city that is more typically Swiss and white makes me miss Guatemala even more. So yeah, so I'm just gonna comment also what I've read. It's very interesting because I wrote this 1 year ago, and I have to think about the fact that I'm actually doing research to try to find some family in Guatemala at the moment. And I still haven't found anyone till now, but it's still something that it's a process right now. And I also would like to go to Guatemala again. Yeah, I would like to go back actually. And I think I'm gonna go back next year, hopefully. And yeah, and also the fact that now I'm studying also contemporary history at the university in my master, but I also chose as a minor Latin American studies. And this is a way to connect from to Guatemala in a way also, and to the region I come from. We all come from, I mean, yeah, partly, but yeah. Yeah, it makes me also reflect on the fact that I have to navigate through 3 different cultures and 3 different backgrounds, I guess, because I have to navigate through my Italian family, but also with a history of migration also in Switzerland. And it's also not easy sometimes. And I wish I could have some people to talk to about that, because I always feel like I never fit in any of those boxes. And it's always like sometimes it's easy to go to one place it's easy for people to put you in a box and be like, okay, you're not Swiss, or you're not this, or you're not this. And so it's very frustrating sometimes. But I think I can manage. Actually, it's not that difficult, I guess, but it's frustrating sometimes, I have to say. But yeah, I guess that was what I had to say for you guys, and thanks for listening.
Thank you so much, Antonio. Next, we have Mario Dellow, who will be sharing an excerpt from a video he has made.
I'm José Mario Dellow, and I'm an artist and I'm an educator. And I was adopted from Guatemala, and I grew up in the UK. I was adopted at 6 months old. And I've got 2 films in the journal, and they're on the YouTube page. And the first one that I was going to play a bit of is a conversation between 3 Guatemalan adoptees, and we were all about 20, I can't remember how old we were, about like 23 or something like that. And we'd not met each other before. 2 of us had known each other our whole lives, and one of us, we were doing this series of interviews, and we interviewed 9 different people of all different ages, and it was really lovely. And lots of themes of kind of guilt and not fitting in, and kind of complexity around relationships with our families, all kinds of identity things came up in the conversation. If you get time, please do watch it, because I think, I'm proud of the conversation we had. And then there's a slideshow of films behind, of pictures behind on top of the voice. And those pictures are all taken from like a sort of treasure trove that my family built for me. And they took, pictures from me on the plane and me in the hotel when they first came to pick me up. So that all comes behind it. And I think that there is a very distinctly kind of adoptee thing about those photos, that I think everyone will probably have some images like that. And that's quite an international thing. So that's the first film. So please do watch it if you get a chance. And then the second film I made was titled The Artist's Family Watches Diego Visit His Birth Family in Guatemala. And that's a home video that I found on YouTube, which you might have seen. And in the second video, I take extracts from this YouTube video about this little boy called Diego. And I show that to my family. So please go and watch that as well. And then we put this in the journal, and Diego's father found my film on the Next Generation Guatemala's YouTube page. So like, it's got this kind of weird meta life of Diego made a video, then I made a video about him, then Next Generation Guatemala put the video online, and he commented on it. And I've read it a few times and cried a bit. I don't know, there's something about it that I really like. So I wanted to share the comment that he wrote on my film with you guys, and then my reply. And that's what I wanted to say this evening. So he said, I don't know if I'll cry or not. He said, I'm Diego's adoptive father. I'm pleased our little video could be used as a jumping off point for your discussion with your family. Like you, I was never certain we were doing the right thing to expose him to all the drama at such a young age. The video was a project he proposed to show his classmates to explain why he was brown with old white parents. It turned out to be more than that. After I uploaded it to YouTube, just to have some place to store it, a viewer suggested I change the name. I called it Diego Reports from Guatemala. So I changed the name to include birth family, and the views went from hundreds to thousands. The video was done in 2009, and a lot has happened since. His birth father didn't fatally injure his sister. She died from kidney failure. Diego was diagnosed with failing kidneys a year after we made this video. Diego suffered through kidney transplant and lymphoma during his teenage years. Needless to say, it was hard on everyone. Today, he's 24 years old and a student teacher at a local high school, getting a master's degree in special education. I couldn't be prouder of the young man he's become. We will always question whether we did him a service or a disservice by taking him to his family at such a young age. I wish you all the best in your journey, Dan. And then I replied, Dear Dan, thank you so much for your kind comment and for watching my video. It means a great deal to me. I've always wondered what your family might think. I hope I've produced something which you feel is respectful while also being authentic. I'm purposely not in the video. The views expressed are that of my family members at the time. Some of them have developed since making the film in 2020. I've never returned to Guatemala. I learned a huge amount from your video. Thank you for sharing your experience. It has been very powerful for me. The news that Diego is doing well is brilliant. We're similar ages. Funnily enough, I'm an educator with a master's degree in social justice and education. Thank you again for getting in touch. This is one of the many experiences which makes me deeply appreciate my adoption. All the best, Mario. So yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mario, for sharing. And yes, if you haven't watched the videos, please check them out. The link is in the chat here and on our social media as well. So with that, I want to introduce our next speaker, Thom LaPorte, who will close us out with his entry from My America.
Hey, everyone. So everyone that's read here today has a common denominator, and that's we were all adopted. It means that we've dealt with people looking at us funny when our parents are white and we're brown-skinned people. We've had issues with Spanish, people trying to speak Spanish with us. We've had issues with abandonment, and loneliness. And these are all common denominators between adopted people. But there's a point in our adopted stories where we diverge from that narrative and kind of take on lives of our own. I was born in 1997 in Guatemala, and I was adopted at 8 months old and brought to the United States. But my real story started in 2011 on January 2nd. The anniversary just passed 12 years of when I was hospitalized with a disease called pancreatitis. We don't know if it is a hereditary disease, but my piece that I wrote, it's called Contemplation. It's kind of trying to make sense of everything that's happened after that point. So I'm going to read that excerpt for you from Contemplation, and then I'm also going to read a poem that I had written. So here's the piece, Contemplation. 'Twas a spell ago I was surrendered by my mother to the adoption system with hope for this young boy to find a happy home, a place of health and love and religion. While these wild seeds bloomed in foreign land, they would struggle. At the age of 13, I was rushed to the emergency room, diagnosed with a disease called pancreatitis, a disease where the pancreas digests itself and becomes inflamed. At my current age, 24, I'm 25 now, but a cause for this illness is still presumed to be hereditary, though there's no way of knowing without finding my lost family. At the age of 17, I recognized I had found a home with my adoptive mother and father, who loved me with all their being. I found a degree of happiness and acceptance with my adoption, but it didn't last. My adoptive father, born with cystic fibrosis, a genetic lung disease which destroys the fibers of the lungs, claimed him. And just like that, my source of love splintered. I realized the hatred that their white God had for me, abandoned by a birth mother, given a chronic illness which will kill me eventually, witnessing my father, among many other people, die in front of me, so much tragedy. At the age of 23, I became interested in my heritage. I tried to learn about my people, of the Guatemalans, and of all they endured. I learned of the Maya and their gods, the brown-skinned gods who created me of Ishim, which is corn. The ones who understand me in a way a white god never could. And I learned to follow and trust them. Though most of my familiarity with my country at first came from viewing videos on YouTube, where some people videotape themselves driving through my hometown of Malacatan, I developed a connection. I learned from books and videos, eventually finding Guatemalan communities in my state of New Jersey and learning customs from their mouths. My home country has been through so much. It is to them that I dedicated my master's project at Rowan University. It is to them I crafted and am crafting a novel called The Mayan Book of the Dead, a horror story which explores the reaction of the Mayan gods to the Guatemalan Civil War. Genocide is a more proper term, which took place between 1960 and 1997. So many descendants of the Maya were massacred. It is to my Guatemalan people I pose a question. How did we brave the storm, and where do we go? Where do I go from here? So a few updates with that, with the illness that I have. A few weeks ago, I was hospitalized for the 15th time for pancreatitis. And after 12 years, we may finally have an answer of what's causing it. It may be autoimmune, and that means that we can treat it now. Which is huge for my life. And it's also, again, changing the narrative of my life story. But yeah, so much has happened that has made me a different person while still having the common denominator of adoption. And I just think that it is so interesting to see other people's narratives too. And I love exploring people and just learning about their lives and about what they faced. And I think the adoption stories are the most interesting. So my next poem, it's called The Quetzal Bird. This poem that I wrote, it's an ekphrastic poem, which means it's a poem about a painting. This is a painting that I got from a Guatemalan store in Hopewell, New Jersey, called Typical El Quetzal. I bought this painting. It just spoke to me when I saw it. It was like 120 bucks. I dropped that money instantly. But here's the poem, and it's about what's happened in Guatemala. How heavenly the bird with the long tail stares. How hidden in the ambient green and ghastly gloom does the bird perch, perpetually unaware of the mystery looming behind it, the past, as it were, of a country in smoke and storm and flame and war and crime. Yet the bird is perched, silently contemplating, silently constituting, silently considering. Bird of long and beautiful song, what future do you see for your people, for the indigenous people of the once hale highlands? Shall they flee or endure the storm? So this piece is about the Guatemalan Civil War that happened in the 60s to 97. And it's just, when I saw this painting, I instantly thought, Guatemala has been through so much. You know, the Guatemalan Civil War ended just before I was born, and it shaped the lives of thousands of people. But here's the bird still here, the Quetzal bird, this bird of long and beautiful song, this thing that has endured, this thing that was considered holy by the Mayans. It still survives like the Guatemalan people do. And I wanted to really capture that in this poem. And I hope I did. So thank you everyone for listening. And I will now hand it back to Gemma.
All right, so it looks like we've got some questions in the chat. Gemma, I don't know if you wanted to finish up or if I can head right into that.
Yeah, go for it. But I guess before we go into it, I just want to thank all of our contributors for sharing parts of their essays with us. I mean, this is the first time I'm seeing everybody or half the contributors on the screen at the same time. So I'm just like trying to hold it back too. I'm really proud of everything that they've shared, wrote, and yeah, could encourage everyone to check out the full issue to read more from the community.
Great, thank you, Gemma. And then I am going to have Lindsay's going to post in the chat where you can find the anthology below, because I did get a question about that. But to start us off, what are some of your hopes for adoptee readers of this anthology, Guatemalan and other international adoptees alike? What would you like us to come away with after reading this and viewing the work? Thomas, we can go with you first because we just left off with you. What are some of your hopes for adoptee readers of this anthology, Guatemalan and other international adoptees? What would you like us to come away with after reading this?
For adoptees, I hope that this will inspire them to kind of search their heritage and to explore the feelings that they are feeling, you know, the abandonment, the loss that comes with adoption, but also to embrace that, because that is unique to their story, their life story, and it's part of who they are. To non-adoptive people who are watching, I hope that you will continue to take the time to listen to the stories and try to understand and have empathy for adoptees, and continue just your own journey of learning what adoption means to other people.
I can go next if that's okay. What I hope that Guatemalan adoptees take away from this is that they're not alone, because for the longest time I was like, no one, like, has anyone been through this? I just didn't know how big the numbers were until I met my very first Guatemalan adoptee. And that's what I hope that other transracial adoptees know, is that they're not alone, that there are other people that are experiencing this, that, you know, I hope that they are able to find a community like I was able to find in Next Generation Guatemala. And I also hope that to those who aren't adopted, that you really listen and uplift adoptee voices, especially Indigenous adoptee voices. I think in the sphere of Guatemalan adoptees, I think those are the voices that need to be uplifted the most. And I hope that I hope parents, if any parents are watching this, like, please listen to your children when they say, hey, I don't feel like comfortable going to this like family function because it makes you feel uncomfortable. Just listen to your children, and I think that's the best you can do.
Great, thank you, Leah. I have for Gemma and Carly, what was your experience editing other adoptees' work?
I think, well, I said it before, I was just so amazed by the variety of work and how personal it was. I feel like a few years ago, I would never have been able to like write something like this or like feel like I had the power, I guess, to edit it. But I was just very thankful, and I'm still so thankful for the generosity of all of our contributors for how open they are with their work. So getting to edit that kind of felt like coming home in a sense, you know, getting to see for the first time so many other voices who shared something so similar to my own, as well as voices from all around the world. As Leah was saying earlier, like you do really feel isolated kind of growing up and not seeing people who look like you who share this experience, but getting to be surrounded by all of these stories, especially as somebody who is within the literary world and works with words and is a writer and an editor, kind of getting to do something so personal was very great. And again, I'm so thankful for all of our contributors and for having you trust Gemma and I with your work.
No, here to what Carly said. And I learned so much from her because she had experience as an editor. And so right from the beginning, she already knew how to plan an editorial schedule, had all these timestamps and markers and how to communicate with the authors and everything. So for me, it was a learning experience that I got from Carly. And then through that, just got to read all the amazing submissions and read how she either edited with folks or like arranged order of our themes that we developed across the different issues. And so I think in my capacity, it was a support to that, but that would be my experience with it.
Sure, thank you. What advice would you give other international adoptees who want to write or create art about their experiences? Antonio, you can go first. Take it away.
I don't know. I think I'm just going to talk about my experience. Just reading the post on Instagram from Next Generation Guatemala, I was, we can say, inspired by it. I was like, okay, maybe I felt it was the right time to write something or just to share my story with more people. And it sounds a bit cheesy, but just listen to your heart, or just listen to what you have inside, and just explore. I don't know, write or just draw something, or just, I don't know, produce, I don't know, poems, or just sing, or just whatever is comfortable for you, whatever feels comfortable for you. And then to share it with other adoptees. I guess that's what I would advise, because I can feel like I can say that I felt, in a sense, relieved to share my story. I felt good to share my story with other people, and yeah, I don't have a proper answer to that, but that's what I would say, I guess.
Mario, since I know you shared your art with us too, that was something different and from the other contributors. So I was wondering too, what advice you would give as an artist to those of us out there who might want to show our stories that way.
I think that adoption happens to us when we're very young, often. And I think that creative disciplines like art and writing and poetry are perfect, because our feelings around this thing that's happened to us in adoption are often not finished thoughts, and they're not clear, and they might be difficult. So you might, and they're not, you know, we don't explore things creatively that we're kind of like, that they're just really easy, and they're just kind of tied up and simple. So I think it's just such a great way to think through these things. And also I would encourage anyone, the first thing I'd do is encourage you just to go for it and just to do something. But I'd really encourage you to do it, because I have like a bit of a catalogue now of work that I've made from when I was well, I suppose like when I was like 15, you know, in different little ways. And it's really, it's really, really interesting to look at work that I made at art school about adoption, work that I made when I was in school, you know, work that I've made recently. Yeah, it's quite a powerful thing to kind of look back over that history. So I would encourage anyone to kind of create that and have that for themselves.
Yeah, of course. Great answer. Thank you. I have another question from someone. How have you reclaimed your heritage and racial identity in spaces where you may have historically felt, in quotes, othered?
Well, for me, I feel like I can speak a lot about this because I go to a PWI that is has a lot of like very wealthy students, and it's definitely a university that's not very racially aware nor friendly towards its Indigenous students. So for me, I think it first began with decolonizing, and I'm still on that journey, doing research, contacting elders from my nation. So I first began with that journey, and then in like the academic sphere, it began with like actually being loud about being Maya Kiche and Xinca, with not feeling like scared or ashamed of being othered, and speaking out when students say something that's racist towards my people. So I think it began with, I would say, decolonizing, then going to being more loud about and proud about my identity. And I think I've just grown to be a person, to be not as scared to say who I am. And I'm so grateful for Next Generation Guatemala to have helped me with that, and Gemma and like all my friends that I have here. And I think it's the little acts of resistance that you do every day. Maybe you wear your hair in braids, maybe you wear your like the important jewelry that we have, or huipil, and or you just wear like put stickers on your water bottle that say like land back. So it's the small things that I think really add up, and I think not being afraid to be loud is the biggest one.
Yeah, just to bounce off that answer, what I do is somewhat similar. I just buy as many Guatemalan clothes as I can from the store Typical El Quetzal in New Jersey, and I just walk around in all of my Guatemalan clothing. I also wear like different ponchos made from the Inca or whatever. But the idea is to make it obvious of who I am, that I am not part of this kind of whitewashed community. I am also something else. And I feel like that's very important. One of the other things I'm trying to do is get my hair out of my face to really show all of my Indigenous features. Because to me, that's just a major point of pride that I have as an Indigenous person.
From what both of you said, I'm curious to just, you know, Leah, you said about being loud, and then Thomas, you said coming to the symbolism of like getting your hair out of your face. What is that emotionally like, sort of doing that for the first time? I mean, I feel like some of us coming to terms with the adoption, all that, like, what was that like for you in these crowds of more privileged, homogenous spaces, I guess is what I'm saying.
For me, it's been a long journey of decolonizing, learning, taking like a step back and recognizing that I need to highlight other mind voices in the sphere of things, that I am still learning, that I need to respect my elders and all of that. And I think one of like the most profound moments of my journey and like the kind of like emotional aspect of that was when I was walking to the university mailroom to go pick up a copy of the Popovo, which is kind of my people's creation story. So just kind of walking there, carrying that book around, reading it in the cafe that used to be called a Res. It was like you just kind of get chills, and it feels like I am doing something for my community. And I think you feel a lot of emotional weight, but when you're ready, you know when you're ready. Everyone always says that, like, when you're ready, you'll know. I knew when I was ready to like read the book, to start my journey. And I also want to thank Gemma for being there for me throughout all of that and being a great friend. I have I'm part of the Indigenous Center on my campus, and they've been really great with, like, it's nice to have little pockets and communities where you go. So I'd say if you could if you have like a Latin American community in your city or at your university or an Indigenous community, to really get involved with that and to start connecting with people.
There's something that I want to add to that. Answer two questions at once, kind of. But when I was at my university, at Rowan University, there was this Hispanic group on campus. And when I went there, it just felt odd. Like I didn't necessarily belong because I didn't speak Spanish and I wasn't raised with the heritage that they were. And that was an enlightening experience because I really am part of two different worlds, not belonging to either one fully. And I think that's pretty common. I mean, if you're adopted and you go to a group like that, you might feel that way too, but that's okay because you will learn your culture from other people. You know, it's scary, but it's worthwhile. What else was I going to say? In terms of expressing myself, at the beginning when I was starting to wear my cultural clothing, in simplest terms, it was scary as hell. You know, you don't know how people are going to react. You don't know if, because we're minorities in the United States, there are a lot of racist people around, you know. So it was kind of scary at the beginning, but eventually I just started feeling like, hey, this is who I am now. This is the actual me. This is my foundation, and that allowed me to really take pride in everything that I was doing. And like, I wear ponchos all around the place now. Yesterday I walked in, or maybe 2 days ago, I walked into a bagel store because I was getting my breakfast, and I had my poncho on, and a guy came up to me and he's like, yo, you looked like you were in a movie, like when you walked in that door, you know. And it's like stuff like that, that's just really cool. But just express yourself, express whatever Indigenous parts you have in you, or express whatever culture you're from. The only way we can normalize it is by doing it.
Thank you. I sort of wanted to ask you guys all this last one. I think this is just for all of you and in general. Where do you see your journey taking you in the next few years? So I don't know who wants to start that off.
I have no idea where my future is, but I hope to learn more about the Maya and get in contact with more people in the nation. I want to get back to Guatemala at some point, but my health restrictions are one thing. My mental health issues with planes are a different thing. But I definitely want to be further in touch with my culture within like the next 5 years. I just want to be authentic, or at least more authentic than I already am right now. And that comes from just experiencing the culture with people I know and people who are Guatemalan.
And I think for me, my journey with identity and kind of reclaiming heritage comes in waves. There are some days where I feel very connected to Guatemala and my own Indigenous heritage, and some days where I feel way more American, just kind of depending on the day. But I think one thing that is always on my mind, is always very important to me, and editing this issue has helped me see, is the importance of representation. You know, I work in a literary industry where we are constantly putting out things that have the chance to empower different voices. And so in a career-esque way, I can kind of see my own personal journey coming through and wanting to uplift adoptee voices, uplifting Latin voices, uplifting Indigenous voices, and uplifting the voices of anybody kind of who hasn't had a place before. So I can kind of see similarities between that. But personally, I don't know, I have been enjoying kind of just riding a wave and kind of seeing where it takes me, as cheesy as that sounds.
For me, I just want to highlight something really quickly that Gemma wrote in the chat, that like Guatemalan heritage is Ladino, Garifuna, Xinca, and like European and Maya. Like it's a mezcla of people, it's a mixture of people. And mine isn't like the only like Indigenous, like there are groups within the Mayan, and it's very complex. So I just want to highlight that because that's important, relevant to what I'm going to say. So for me, I'm trying to learn Quiche. So I hope that in 5 to 10 years, I will be fluent and be able to possibly be like a translator for like people that need it. I also hope to go to law school to concentrate on international law and help with like land treaties, like land back in the United States where I live now. and to also learn more about my Xinca background, because there's not as many resources available about them as there are about the Quiche. So that would be something that I would really like to explore.
For me, it would be to go to Guatemala, to go back and to explore the country, and also maybe go back to the place I come from. And yeah, and just to, because it's so far away from Switzerland and financially, and also like I have so many other things in my life right now. I have studies, I work. So it's very hard to feel connected, and talking with you guys, it makes me realize how so disconnected I am from Latin America in general. And it makes me realize that I want to go there. Actually, I want to go to Guatemala, and I want to improve my Spanish too, and I'll maybe learn an indigenous language too. And as Carly mentioned too, it comes in waves too, because it's to me, there are days where I feel completely Italian, because I hang out with a lot of Italian people that are from third generations here in Switzerland, and I totally relate to them. I know the language, I know the dialects, I know the culture, I know the history, and I totally relate to them. But then there's always this barrier of like, I'm not from there. Like, and so then there are days where I feel completely Swiss, because I talk the 3 languages of the country, and I totally feel related to that. But then there are days where people from Switzerland or here in general make me feel like I'm not from here, I'm a foreigner, and I'm from Guatemala. Like, even though for people here in Switzerland, I am ambiguously, like, they don't understand that I come from Latin America. Usually people think I'm from Asia, and that's also an interesting subject, I guess. But yeah, so yeah, it's just in 5 years, I guess, I hope I will have traveled at least 2 times in Guatemala and improved my Spanish. And yeah, that's it for now. And then I will see what I will do.
It's a good question for me, because I really didn't know the answer, but since because I think that I did quite a lot of work thinking about adoption a few years ago, and then other things took precedence in my life, like difficult things that I've been through. But I think for me, the next step would be probably reconnecting, and with adoptees in the UK who I really care about. But we don't, and this is one that everyone knows this, that we don't live, even if we lived in the same city, even if we'd all agreed to just like get adopted to London or something, it would make it easier, but that's not the case. And it's hard even people that live not far from me. But anyway, I think I would like to do that. I would be interested to, I think that would help me to build confidence. I'm really, really scared of going to Guatemala, like emotionally. Like, I just have this absolute, but then hearing people who said they've been and who want to go, it makes me want to go a little bit, but it's just so big in my head for some reason. So maybe if I connected with adoptees, I wonder if maybe I build my confidence and maybe want to go back to Guatemala and something like that. So I think that's my first step, so we'll see.
I just want to say on behalf of Also Known As, again, a huge thank you to all of our guests tonight. This was such a wonderful and rich and powerful experience, I think, for all of us. And I think it also shows what the significance of having these moments to bond and to learn from each other and each other's experiences. With that, we're going to share again the social links for Next Generation Guatemala. Please check them out, see what's going on there. And also again to this amazing anthology that I really encourage you all to take some time to read. With that too, if you enjoyed tonight's program and want to help support, please consider donating to us at alsoknownas.org. We also have other programs like a mentorship and a scholarship for all international adoptees. And with that, I think one last big thank you to our contributors, and good night. So thank you all.